Okay, so today, this morning, this video, this is actually my second video on the same day. I'm still not ready to actually get in and start reading. I'll probably do that next time. But I am going to say a few things about my approach here to the Bible. I'm going to say a few things about myself to give you some information for whatever credibility I have, and then I'm going to say a few things about my approach to studying Scripture and what I'm going to be, how I'm going to be reading this through and speaking it and talking about it. I consider myself to be more of a teacher. I'm not a preacher. Okay, it's like I have never sought to make myself into a preacher. To me, and I do not know what the dictionary definitions are of these things, but to me, preaching indicates sermonizing. There, to be a preacher as opposed to just a teacher, you not only have to explain the scriptures, which is what I'm going to try to do, but you also then have to give some sort of sermon or moral life lesson on what the reader should do with the teaching. I'm not in that business. I don't consider myself a preacher. I do see myself, however, as a teacher. I am someone who can explain what the scriptures say. That's what I see my value as being. I have been a Bible student essentially my entire life. I'm 40 years old. I'll be 40 this year. I was raised in the Bible. I would have gone to church even before I was born, in the womb of my mother, even before I was born. And I was receiving constant Bible instruction all throughout my early days. I went to a Bible school, a Zion Lutheran Church, which I went to. Also has a school attached to it that went from pre-K up to 8th grade. And I went all the way through 8th grade. Did not go to the local Lutheran high school. I went to the public high school for that. But up until I was through 8th grade, I studied the Bible as just a regular daily subject in school. Like I said in my previous video, I outgrew the need or the usefulness of the daily devotional probably 20 years ago, when I was about 20 years old. And haven't really had a need or a use for such types of scripture readings ever since. I went through a phase in my 20s where I had difficulty accepting what the scriptures said. I never doubted what they said. I never disbelieved in what they said, but I went through a phase in my 20s where I had difficulty accepting it. In particular, I had difficulty seeing my role in it, seeing my purpose in it, aligning my goals with God's goals. I never had a problem believing that God existed. In fact, there was a period of time when I was in my early 20s when I tried to make myself believe that God didn't exist, and I couldn't do it. I'll go into more specifics about that as we go through relevant Bible passages that kind of talk about that sort of thing. But that has never been an issue for me, doubting in the existence of God or the existence of an afterlife. The existence of a God inherently indicates the existence of an afterlife. In fact, that's what mythology, as we call it, is the belief in existing in an justifying a belief in an afterlife and the gods that govern it. So I never had a problem with any of that. Even in the age of science and technical awareness, I still don't have a problem with it. In fact, I think in the age of COVID, we've seen a very clear example of the shortcomings of these newfound gods we call scientists that we've been trying to put on pedestals so much in recent years. And so I don't have any particular credentials. I've been taking Bible classes taught by an actual credentialed Bible instructor at my church in Greater Alton now for 15 plus years. I've gone through almost the entire curriculum. In fact, I have gone through the entire curriculum. I think there's like one or two classes I haven't taken. Many of them I've taken more than once. And they are an actual academic curriculum. If I had wanted to, I could have done them all for credit and graduated and gotten a little slip. I thought about doing that. In fact, a number of years ago, I did take some of these courses for credit, but I decided in the end not to. I don't have any teaching credentials, and I don't actually want to have any teaching credentials. It's actually kind of important to me not to have any teaching credentials. I don't want to be seen as someone who's worth listening to just because he's got a certificate from someplace or another. Um, I am. I'm a pretty contrarian sort of person. I like going against the grain. I like going against the flow. I'm not a conformist. In fact, I'm pretty strongly a nonconformist. In my early days, when I was a teenager, I was something of an anarchist, and I've still got a little bit of that gene in me. So I don't necessarily like fitting into a formal structure or a formal system or a formal way of doing things. So I don't. So in the end, I was not comfortable with the idea of going through the courses for credit and getting like a certificate that just demonstrated my credentials to people who really needed to see credentials. And I understand some people do want that. I understand that some people only want to study the Bible with people who are credentialed or who are pastors or whatever. And as far as I'm concerned, I want I read about these apostles in Acts, and the text describes them as unschooled ordinary men, and I want to say I'm a pretty unschooled ordinary guy. Like I said in my last video, there's nothing appealing about me at all. I'm not here to sell myself. I'm not here to sell my credentials. I'm not here to sell a certificate. I'm not here to convince anyone that I am. When I read academic articles, and I do, when I read theological articles, and I do, and I study a lot of this stuff. Okay, I read books, I read articles. I'm going to go into stuff. When I read the Bible, I'm not just going to be reading the Bible. I'm going to be going into a lot of the background and details behind the Bible, and a lot of stuff that goes in pretty deep. Because I've read this stuff. I've read books. I've read commentaries. I've read articles. And when I read these articles, especially for example, when you go back to the really ancient books like Genesis, which is 3,500 years old, and of course the events covered in Genesis go back even farther than that, and then you start wondering, okay, how much of this actually happened? Like, where's the data? Where's the backup of this? Well, then you get into archaeology and all that stuff, and so you read archaeological articles or other sorts of things, and you'll see these articles written by people with these long lists of letters behind their names. A PhD in this, or a PhD in that, or whatever, a Bachelor of Arts in this, or a Master of Science in that, or whatever. Okay. Whatever sorts of degrees you have. And it's like I don't want to get caught up in that. You look at me, and you're not going to see a certificate or a degree trailing behind my name, proving my credentials in some field or another. You're not going to see that. I'm never going to have that. I've got nothing to offer in that regards, and I never am. I never am going to have anything like that to offer. If my arguments are not persuasive, you can feel free to shut me out, forget about me, put me in a box somewhere, and forget I even existed. Okay, like that's. Believe me, I'm used to that. There is nobody out there, like I said before, there's nobody out there who fits the profile of the guy that we just flat out don't care about more than me. Okay, it's like I was that way all through school. I was that way as a young adult. I'm just that. That is my role in life. All right, I'm the guy that just nobody. We're fine not caring about this guy. We're fine not listening to this guy. We're fine putting this guy in a corner somewhere and forgetting about him. Like that's my role in life. So I am completely used to that. So no, I don't have a degree. I don't have any letters behind my name. I don't have any plaques. My wall is completely bare. I've got a couple of old video game posters over there. I've got a whiteboard where I've gotten some of my own stuff, instructions and stuff written to myself up there. Well, this wall is completely bare. All right, all you see is this smudge behind me where I used to put my chair up against this wall, and I left a smudge there, and that's it. I mean, it's like this is it. There's nothing more. There's nothing here but me, and that's all you're gonna get. You're gonna get me. You're gonna get the Bible. You're gonna get me reading the Bible and then talking about it. That's all this is. Okay, I wanted to go ahead and break that up. Probably making the lessons too long isn't good, I'm going to assume. This is video 3. I'm doing this right after video 2, so this is all still in the same day. As far as I'm concerned, sitting here on this chair, it's all been within the last hour. Alright, before I get into it, I'm not actually going to start reading today. But I am going to cover one last set of introductory materials as I go through this. I think it's already been pretty well established at this point that I'm offering these videos for the more serious Bible student. I'm not, like, so that, I'm taking for granted that anybody who actually listens to me harp on these videos is actually serious about studying the Bible. And I am simply here to help facilitate that. You go on and do your own thing after you get done listening to me, and study it for yourself and agree or disagree with whatever it is that I'm saying here. Again, I'm not teaching an actual course per se because I had no students. I have no one actually in front of me to talk to or speak to or listen to questions from or feedback from. So I'm just going to be speaking, uninterrupted, except for my cats, which I'll try to keep those interruptions to a minimum as much as possible. I'm going to be going through the Bible from Genesis to Revelation. Now, again, this is going to take me a year plus to do, all right? One time and one time only, I was able to get this all done in the span of a year from January 1st to December 31st. It's already the end of March right now. And I'm not going to force myself to do that this time, especially this time since I have to prepare for these videos and all that. Like, I'm not going to force myself to get through this in a year. I'm not going to force myself to do one of these every day, for example. But I am going to I'm going to do it. I mean, I'm slow. Everything I do in life is slow. But I'm sure. I'm slow but sure. If in the race between the tortoise and the hare, I'm the tortoise. Okay, I'm the tortoise in the race. I do not do anything fast. I do not get anything done fast. You do not ever turn to me for help if you need things done right away. Never, ever turn to me for help if you need things done right away. But turn to me for help if you need things done. It's like if you need someone to actually get something done, even if it's not fast, I'll get it done. I'm slow, but I'm sure. I will get this done, unless I die, but I will get this done. It just won't be done fast. I'll get these videos done, but they won't be done fast. When I do this, I'm going to be reading through the books of the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, roughly in the order in which I believe they were written. That is more or less how I approach studying the scriptures. There are two, as I said in, I believe it was the first video, there are two ways of viewing the Bible chronologically. You've got the order in which the events happened, and that would be like your actual timeline. That would be your actual chronology of history. And then you have the order in which the books were most likely written, which in some cases lines up the same as the actual timeline of events, and in some cases there may be some variation. The books are also, in the Old Testament in particular, in many instances difficult to date precisely because many of them are made up of historical documents that we no longer have access to that the original writers did, and it's difficult to say to what degree the compiler of the material or the redactor or editor of the later material wrote new material. It's like we really don't know these things. There's a lot of these things that are just no, go away. There are a lot of these things that are very ambiguous and will remain ambiguous until we get to heaven and we ask God himself. Okay, this is not the troublemaker, but this is the one that sometimes gets bit by a bug. She's Luna. Her name is Luna. Every so often she goes crazy. Every so often. Not most of the time she's pretty fine. Though a couple of times a day she just goes crazy. The other one is always crazy. Timber, the skinny one, is always crazy. Timber and Luna are sisters. Luna is not always crazy, but once or twice a day she gets bit by the crazy bug. I call it the Lunatrix. And she just goes completely insane. And she's kind of making me think she might be in one of those movies right now. Which is tricky because I don't want her to knock over the camera. She's looking at it. I mean, she wants to knock over that camera. I mean, that would just fill her heart with joy and gladness if she can knock over that camera. I mean, she is. Oh, here she comes. No. What are you doing? What are you doing, cat? Anyway, what was I saying? I don't know. What was I saying? The chronology of the events, of course, is the backbone of history. I'm sorry, this cat is distracting me. This is where, of course, archaeology and things like that become important to help us date events according to our timeline. This cat wants to get into this camera. I mean, she is looking at it. She wants to knock this camera over. I mean, she is just waiting for me to drop my guard so you can get to this camera. And I'll talk about each, I'll talk about it in context as I go through it. In my reading, I'm going to be going through the books mainly in the order in which I feel they're most likely written. That is the approach that makes the most sense to me in terms of, here she comes, in terms of reading through the accounts. One thing that we need to clarify, one thing that I want to make sure that we're aware of as we go through this, and this is particularly true, in the early books of the Bible, the ones written by Moses and some of the very early writers, is that we need to remember the Bible itself is a continuing revelation from God that he was gradually unfolding over the course of time. Now, we have the entire revelation made known to us here in our written bound Bibles, and have for 1900 years. Okay, the revelation from God has been complete for centuries. I believe the last book in the Bible to be written was the book of Revelation. I believe that was written in about the year, let's just round it off to say about 100 AD. And I believe that was it. I believe that was the last book of the New Testament to be written. I believe there has been no further addition to the written canon of Scripture since then. That was 1900 years ago. But before that, the written canon was not complete. So the written revelation of God was still ongoing, still unfolding. So, for example, when you reread the works of Moses, we need to realize that Moses didn't know that everything that God was going to tell people over the ages after Moses. Jesus in the Gospels talks about how the prophets of old longed to see what the people of his day were seeing. They spoke about things they didn't know about. Paul talks about, in many of his letters, talks about the mystery that had been kept hidden in days past. The men of the Old Testament spoke about these things. The prophets spoke about these things, prophesied about them, wrote about them, but didn't understand them. In his farewell address to the people of Israel, which is what the book of Deuteronomy is as a whole, in Deuteronomy 29:29, Moses says, "The secret things belong to the Lord our God, but the things revealed belong to us and to our children forever, that we may follow all the words of this law." Now Moses is writing this in the late 1400s BC. They're about to go into the promised land. He's about to die. And he is leaving behind his record of everything that they've done, and the revelation that God has given to him, or given to them through him. And he's stating it all again in Deuteronomy as part of his farewell address to the people. And he's saying that the things that have been revealed belong to us and to our children forever, but the secret things belong to God. Well, God has secrets he was keeping from Moses that he revealed to people later on in time. Moses died 1400 plus years before Christ came along, and 1500 plus years before the end of the revelation of God to human beings. So in that period of time, there were lots more things that were revealed that were secret to Moses that are not secret to us anymore. Now God still has his secrets. God has not revealed everything to us. He's revealed everything to us that we need to know concerning our salvation. But I am not omniscient. I do not know everything about the world, and neither do you. And as long as that is true, which it will always be true, then there are always going to be things that God knows that we don't. There are always going to be things that God has kept from us. Now, maybe some of these things involve studying the natural order and learning more about the universe that we're going to do when eternity rolls around. I don't know. I'll get to that when I get to that, but I don't know to what degree these things will be revealed to us as we naturally grow and study and live our lives, whatever they may be like, in the eternal age to come. But As Moses said, God has secrets. The secret things are kept for the Lord our God. At the time Moses wrote, God still had secrets that he was going to reveal to mankind. And that is what the rest of the Bible is about. So the revelation of God is an ongoing thing from the time of the beginning of the revelation until the time of its close. I believe God has said all that he's going to say to us now, and that everything that we have, that everything that we need, we have here in our This is so weird because I'm backwards. Like on my monitor, right is left and left is right. I'm not sure why that is. Anyway, so when I'm looking at the monitor, I get confused. And this matters a lot in particular, so when we get to say like Genesis, and we start talking about why Genesis, in particular the beginning of it, is the way it is. And we'll talk about that when I actually get into studying Genesis. But my approach is going to be just to read these Bibles in roughly the order in which I think they were written. I am going to provide historical details and background context. I believe context is very important. I think that we take context out of context a lot. I think that we take these verses and these passages out of context and make them mean anything that we want them to mean, and that is an inappropriate way of handling Scripture. At the same time, I also don't think the Bible itself only exists in its original context. I think the record that we have, what's the word I'm looking for here? Transcends its context to be relevant to us today. But one of the skills of the serious Bible student is understanding to what degree the Bible's instructions and advice are rooted in its context, and to what degree they're universal and should be applied for all time. This is one of the most serious challenges that we have when dealing with the Scriptures today, and so that's one I'm going to be paying particular attention to as we go along. I think that's enough for today. I've been speaking for an hour. This is the end of my third video. And if I have anything more to say before I actually get started with Genesis tomorrow, I'll think of it and put it in another little video, or maybe at the beginning of the Genesis video. But anyway, other than that, the next thing I'm going to do is actually start reading Genesis. And we're going to get to some of these contexts. There. We're going to get to some of these context studies right away, because one of the chapters of the Bible that is most taken out of context in our society today is in fact Genesis 1. So we're going to get a crash course in studying Bible context right at the beginning when we deal with the actual beginning.